Welcome to the Journey to Happy podcast, a podcast dedicated to share inspiring stories, motivational tips to help you tune into your own superpowers, get out of your own way, and show up in your life as your own superhero. Because let's face it, happiness is homemade. I am Olga, your host. Welcome, everybody, to the Journey to Happy podcast. I am Olga, your host, and today I'm here with a good friend of mine and also recently my business coach, my mentor. Her name is Naomi Powell, and did I say that? Yes, now that I was thinking twice, Naomi, I'm sorry. Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said that right. Naomi is the founder of the Lifestyle Edit, where she coaches women in business. And she also has a mastermind called Thrive. And she's a mom of a tiny little baby who is a few months older than my son. So I had the pleasure of going through pregnancy at the same time as Naomi. Her and I met in a mastermind that we both joined last year. And we became really good friends since then. And clearly, friendship was not enough for me. I had to follow her lead because she is such an inspiration. I am inspired by everything that Naomi does, and this is the reason I have invited her into my podcast. Not so much to talk about business, but I was able to recognize, and I am able to recognize that throughout her business, you can see the human that she is and her strategy, her way of thinking, her perceptions of life are simply brilliant, and everybody needs to hear how she goes about life because I think we can all learn from Naomi. So Naomi, thank you so much for joining me in this podcast today. I'm very excited. And I have titled this Coffee with Naomi because that's exactly what I wanted to be felt, as if two friends were sitting in the living room chatting. And yeah, there you go. You have your cup of coffees, and so do I, of course. And my hope is that between the two of us, we can share with people how we go about our personal lives. How have we managed to do running our own business, working at home, what we were saying before the record started. We have been experiencing this COVID-19 scenario for a while now because we run our own businesses from home. We're moms, we're housekeepers, we're just wearing all wives, wearing all these hats at once. And often Naomi and I box about how are you doing this? How are you handling breastfeeding in the middle of the night and then waking up bright and early to do a coaching call? And so, anyways, I'll let this conversation begin. But Naomi, thank you so much for being here. How are you this morning?
I'm so pleased. It's funny that you were talking about all of that. I was navigating that last night. We're in one of those growth, fun times that can come along with that. So yeah, definitely keeping things interesting.
Yeah, I am going to stop my recording, my video. You guys can see us, but we're seeing each other just to improve the sound. Naomi is right now in New York, and I'm in Ottawa, so we're doing this through Zoom. Although it's beautiful to see your face, I'm gonna not have it. So tell me a little bit, what were you doing last night? You were navigating through what it was like to balance things out?
Yeah, so my son is called Atlas. He is going through a bit of a growth spurt at the moment, and I'm sure all the mums listening can appreciate this. He is now it's all about breast milk. He's kind of gone off food. All he wants to do is be cuddled by mum and breastfed. And he's like binge eating in the night. So every 45 minutes or so, he's just waking up. And yeah, it's tough. And it's, on one hand, it's so lovely because he's really in a like mummy mode. And it's wonderful. But running businesses, keeping houses going, being there for your clients, your capacity to be pouring into the multiple roles and relationships that you have, it's tough. So I definitely woke up this morning, needed an extra cup of coffee. It was tough, but
isn't that the worst? Like, I know, Naomi, you and I both worked did our fair amount of work to get to our babies. So I feel that in a way we feel perhaps, I don't know if this is true, but in my mind it feels like perhaps we appreciate a little bit more holding on to these moments where they need us or where they're being really annoying, and we can go back into the story to get to them, and that help us like remain sane and like, okay, no, this is good. But
Yeah,
is
I
it,
think
go ahead.
I think so much of it is just keeping that perspective.
Mm.
Um, we love our jobs, we love what we do, but there's nothing that compares for me to my role as mum. So at times when, right now I'm in the middle of a really intense launch period and I can see myself kind of getting frustrated or like I'm being pulled in 101 different places, and it really helps me to remember, like, yes, you love what you do, but what's the big picture here? Okay, what's the big picture? So for me, being a present mum and really kind of, having that presence with him and just savoring all of these different milestones. You know what it's like I can't believe that he's just about to turn 10 months. I could literally, it's like you blink and it goes. Yes, there are those challenges, but I want to make sure that I'm being present for it, because there's always going to be a launch. There's always going to be a commitment. There's always going to be something that's going on that's pulling me professionally. Yes, I love that, but nothing even compares to being present for him.
And I think this is such an important subject, even for us to dive a little bit deeper, as people are feeling that pressure now where they usually wouldn't, because they were like at work. And so they said the words are so separated on a regular basis for most parents, right? Like if I'm at the office, I can't hear my baby cry. I can't hear my baby need me. Like somebody's taking care of my baby and all I have are these hours. But I think now we're all being faced with this being pulled in 100 directions. I think that's the best way to describe it. And what to do about it. Like you, Naomi, I have decided that my priority is attending my 6-month-old baby. And I absolutely love, like you, what I do. And it's energizing. And I have felt that same frustration lately where I get carried on writing something and I'm in the zone, and then my baby starts like screaming because mom has been absent for a while and he wants my attention, and I feel that pull of like, oh, wait, can you just give me 5 more minutes? So I think what has helped me, I don't know you, what has helped me is, come back to the bigger picture, come back to like what really matters. Like right at this moment he's awake and I'm here. I will have time to finish this later. I let go of my expectations, I guess, of doing everything that I had planned, everything to without interruptions. I think that's a big one. We hope to get into something and never be interrupted, and like realistically today that's impossible.
Exactly. I think so much of it for me has been about honoring where I am. And it's funny, I remember I was at a prenatal class and I was talking to one of the midwives and she was like, I can see like you're very like structured, organized and whatever. She's like, that's clearly served you well in your business. Add a baby in the mix, honey, that's about to go out the window. And so I always say Atlas has been my biggest teacher. Like he has taught me so much about the art of surrender, and that not everything is black and white. Not everything has been rigid. I've had to learn to be so much more flexible and malleable. And even just the way my relationship with my work has really changed. When he was younger, it actually was really nice to just be really present in this new experience of motherhood. And interestingly, during this whole quarantine time, my relationship has actually changed. So I'm living in New York. I'm actually British, so I don't have any family here in New York. So even if I wanted to, we didn't have the support for me to even if I wanted to put in more hours at work. Now my husband's actually home, so I've actually had more time to work on the business. And so even just the hours that I'm working now is probably more than it was when he was first born. And just making it okay right now, everything that I'm doing is so life-giving. I'm enjoying it so much. And I've had to deal with navigating a little bit of guilt, like, oh, but I love him so much. But now actually I'm in this second wave where my business feels like almost like I've started a new business. It reminds me of what it was like, that excitement in the beginning when we were starting, because there's so much changes that are happening, and also making that feeling of wanting to work more be okay too. So it's just this constant dance of like, nothing is set in stone. The one thing that I have to honor how I'm feeling in that time. There's not a right way to do it. There's not a, so long as he's happy, I'm honoring what makes me happy, then I have to just roll with that. And that's always subject to change.
So how do you navigate through this guilt? Because, excuse me, I think this is something that will definitely speak to many people listening to us, especially moms. I think that we are the masters of self-inducing guilt. And I think it's because we feel we ought to do it all. And if we don't, then we're failing at something. And oftentimes what we feel we're failing at is motherhood, because let's face it, it's the most difficult task we will ever get to do, and there is always some improvement to have in that area. So how are you navigating the guilt? What do you do? How do you say you honor your feelings? What does that look like for you?
I think the first thing was really starting to unravel the stories. What does motherhood look like? What should motherhood look like? Oftentimes we have to first recognize that the image that we have of motherhood is a story. It's something that we've seen and we've accepted it as truth, right? And I had to realize that I get to decide what that looks like. It's not because this is the way I was brought up and this is what I saw as the pillar of motherhood that I need to subscribe to that. And I need to work on unraveling what that looks like to me. And that unraveling part is so important because, like I said, it's constantly subject to change. When I first started, when I first had Atlas, my whole thing was like, oh, I created this freedom business, so I shouldn't really be working at all. I should be, in mummy mode all of the time. So no, being a good mum means being present, which is what I saw with my mum. She sacrificed so much professionally that she wanted to do in order to be there for us as kids. So again, because that was what I saw, that kind of self-sacrifice, that instantly became the version of motherhood that I just passively adopted. So I was like, I didn't grow up with any nannies or support. My mum didn't have any of that. She managed to cope, so I should be able to cope. And I was trying to navigate the few hours that I was working with a newborn, living in a new city, not having the support of family. And it just felt so heavy. Was it life-giving to have all this time with my son? Absolutely. But trying to do everything and take on the responsibility for all of those things and not have support, because the version of motherhood that looked so amazing to me that I saw my mum do, I was taking that on. And it's so funny because my mum and I started having really honest conversations about this. And she's like, you're now seeing it, you're reflecting back through the lens of a child. Now that you're a mum, we can have these honest conversations. And it was hard. There was sacrifice. There was this. So it's just been this beautiful kind of evolution, even with my relationship with my mum. And now I'm really starting to determine, what does that look like for me? And we have an incredible nanny who came on, and she supports us a few days a week. I was noticing that when I would come, he'd be like playing in the living room. I'm in my office. And I would hear him laughing and just having a great time. And, she's giving him that designated, like, focused time, as opposed to when I was trying to do 101 things at once. I was then really able to do the life-giving work in my business. Again, now having him, I was like, because he is my priority, I'm going to delegate all of the things that I am not uniquely positioned to do, so that I'm in my zone of genius or I'm with him. And the byproducts of that is that because I was filling my tank up doing those things, when I would then go and take over, when our nanny would leave, he would be so happy and I would be so happy. and our afternoons would be so amazing because I felt like I had that moment.
Yeah.
Just being me, doing the things that kind of light me up. So I was a much more present, grounded, happy mum afterwards.
There's so many things you said in here that I want to dissect. And this is the therapist in me, because I want everybody to like hopefully catch on to the things that you're sharing. First and foremost, I absolutely love that you say this, like what idea we have of motherhood is a story. And it's a story in our minds, and it comes from whatever we saw our parents do. And it could be because we, like my mom's a retired corporate lawyer, and towards the end of her career she owned her firm. Growing up, I saw my mom on weekends. That's it. She worked from 8 in the morning till midnight, and sometimes more than that. I wouldn't see her much. And I remember distinctively when my niece was born, my sister's daughter, my mom saying she was ready to retire, and she was saying to us, my only regret in this life is how much I worked. She's very passionate about her job, and she had 5 kids. God knows she needed to work the amount of hours that she was working. But that stuck with me because she helped me change a little bit the story that I had in my mind. She had that as a regret, and I remember telling myself, whenever it is that I become a mom, I want to make sure that that doesn't happen, because I remember going to school plays, like my school plays, and never having my mom there. And being jealous of all the other children who did have their moms present. So that became my personal goal, to not be in that sense like my mom, but everything else to be like my mom, to be that successful business person. And so this is such an important moment to reflect for anybody listening. What's your story? What story are you telling yourself? Where does it come from? And do you agree with it? And is this working for you? Is that story? And your mom was brilliant. We're looking at the story from the lenses of a child, not as a mom, right? Like the mom wouldn't share with us how hard it was to sacrifice, self-sacrifice, or how hard it was. I never heard my mom complain once about anything in her life. But it was eye-opening for me to notice that she missed us. She missed being a mom throughout those years because she had to work. So, and in my eyes as a kid, I see my mom as a woman who managed to do it all. Right? Like, did she? No, she had help. And the other aspect, Naomi, that you just mentioned, which working with moms, I see is like, this is one of my biggest recommendations, is delegate. And whether it's delegation of who buys the groceries, I welcome you guys to think of how can you make your life easier? Like, what are the things that you can implement in your day-to-day? Whether you're delegating, you're asking for help, you're hiring a particular service, what makes your life easier? Like way before COVID-19, I already had my groceries delivered at home. Because the moment Mateo was born, I realized like newborn, winter, going grocery shopping, challenge. So find what could make my life easier. Just last week, there was a guy here coming to my driveway to change my winter tires. That service exists, so I think that being resourceful and finding ways in which we can find the supports we need, especially, Naomi, you're talking about being a separate city, different country from your family, and no supports, both parents having to work and having a little one.
And I think there's even like the stories even come with the with getting support. If you've just seen everybody else doing it, there is this guilt. It's like, I even speak to my clients and it's like, well, I should be able to clean the house and do this and do the cooking. And even with my nanny, she's like, I can do this. And it was so hard for me to be like, yeah, actually you can, because again, part of this vision of what it means to be a wife, a mom, it's that identity thing. It's that identity. And it's like, intellectually, like, just take that off your plate. It's not a big deal. But it's part of that identity of what that role represents for you.
I remember Naomi and I having conversations about hiring a helper or because we both had the babies, and I was like, how am I going to work? My husband is also self-employed entrepreneur, and his job demands of him to be outside of the home a lot. So as much as we both were prepping our lives to be in this freedom once we have our son, we realized that realistically we needed extra consistent help, right? Like the grandmas, in my case, I'm lucky I have tons of family around me, but even then is the consistency. No, I need you every Tuesday, not just from time to time. So it gets to be much. And I ended up also hiring somebody, and I was very lucky to find somebody within my community. Lovely, lovely lady. But I remember every morning that it was her morning, struggling, telling her like, okay, this is the laundry that could be done, but I should be able to do that. Don't worry about it. I'll do it. And her, it was actually the nanny saying like, you remember you hired me to help you do the things that moms do.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for her because she's also an experienced mom who could read through the lines of my own disappointment, maybe, of not being able to do it all. Like I should be able to do it all.
And you know, the irony is that I have no qualms doing this in my business because I feel like there's not that kind of emotional attachment to the story in my business. It's like, no, I'm a CEO of my company. You delegate, you know, so that you can grow. And I realized by being a mom just how much of the emotional baggage that I have when it comes to delegation in my private life. It's so funny.
It is very interesting. And I swear to God, motherhood comes with guilt. It's like an inherent feeling that, you know, I've coached women for a very long time, especially moms. And I remember thinking prior to being a mom, like, no, I'm not going to abide by guilt. Guilt is not going to be a part of my story. Okay.
Yeah.
Till I became a mom, right? And guilt basically was born the day Mateo was born. So it's just learning to cope. And I think what's helpful is to recognize that it does come with the job, but that we can change that by day by day. And we can allow and give ourselves permission to say, mom deserves to have some time to do what's life-giving to her as well. Not that our children aren't. So question for you, Naomi, how you are being in New York. New York has had alarming numbers with COVID right now. And I can imagine the stress in the city must be at the highest. How are you and your family coping? What has been kind of your thinking around this pandemic, and how has this impacted you?
I have so much compassion to the people who have been really, who've been directly affected by everything that's going on in the world. So I just want to put that out there because I think, you know, all of our hearts go out to all of those people. And I don't want to at all appear insensitive because on the whole, we haven't been affected at all. We're very blessed in that respect. And Olga, you know, the same, especially when you work from home, like quarantine life is very much, you know, normal life in many ways. And I just feel like, for me, doing the inner work to be able to lead myself through moments of uncertainty, anxiety has been work that I've been doing for years. So where I feel like a lot of people are now like, oh my God, this is showing up for me. This is the work that I'm always doing. So I feel like I've built the inner arsenal and the inner reserves in order to navigate any of the kind of anxiety that would be coming up. But we just do practical things that we do all the time. Like I always say to my clients, how are you cultivating a curriculum of success? What do I mean by that? What are you listening to? What are you spending your time watching? Right? That so puts an imprint on our thoughts, our emotions, the way that we then take action. So we every evening we'll just check in on the news, but that's not something that we're sitting consuming all of the time. Instead of us really focusing on how scary and uncertain it is, we've just really kind of come together as a family and been like, what is the blessing in this? And for us, the blessing has been, we have a home that we love. We're together as a family. My husband is off work and he's at home. We've had more uninterrupted quality family time than we've had since Atlas was born. For us, that's been the biggest gift. I've been able to continue my business. My husband, who is working 9 to 5, now all of a sudden has been able to see Atlas with all of his leaps, because typically when he gets home, Atlas is already in pajamas and about to go to bed. So for me, it's been so wonderful to see him be able to be a part of all of the little things that I may take for granted because I'm just, I'm there every day. So as I wish that the cause would have been different, but for us it's been life as usual in many ways. And one thing that I think all of us should be thinking about is like, how can we be living at the cause of our lives rather than the effect? And I've had to mute a lot of people on social media because who have not been directly affected, but are still living at the effect of what's going on in the world. So much of the mindset work that I do is about what am I in control of? How can I be at the cause of my life? How can my thoughts be higher than the current reality? Right? So I'm just really intentional about that.
This is why, guys, I say that Naomi is an inspiration. So, Naomi, how do you answer that question? How can I make my thoughts be higher than what's happening?
Whenever I have those moments where anxiety starts to come up or whatever, I'm always just sit and I'm like, where is this coming from? Is this really true? The fact that I'm feeling these negative emotions shows that there's a cognitive dissonance with what I'm actually trying to call into my life. So how can I bring myself up the emotional scale? Right? So sometimes it's like taking the catastrophizing out of my thoughts. So that's where I'll start to write it down. Like, okay, what is this? Okay, what's the worst case scenario? Let me work that out. Actually, it's not that bad. Okay, how can I see this in a different way? So I could be seeing these set of circumstances as, oh, what's going to happen? There's going to be furloughs, there's going to be layoffs, there's going to be this. Instead, we're thinking, okay, if that's going to be the case, my husband has always wanted to do this. Maybe now is an opportunity. So I'm always trying to, first of all, brain dump everything that I'm feeling just to honor the thoughts. And then I'm always asking myself empowering questions like, how could we be seeing this in another way? What is the opportunity in this? How can I be thinking, again, being really clear about what am I trying to call into my life? How do I want to feel? And then using that as a framework to start to think about like the opportunities in this. So I'm always like, how can we be consciously tapping into thoughts that represent where we want to go, rather than looking to our results as evidence of like what's possible for us, or
So yeah, this is amazing. I do the same thing. So I think this is so key for you guys listening. It's not believing every thought you have just because you're having it, but also not be so afraid of it that you don't want to stop and repair where it's coming from, and looking at how can you change this way of thinking. I think fear is paralyzing, and many of our thoughts are fear induced, especially right now. I love, Naomi, that you're muting people on social media. That's empowering. And I think many of us feel like that will be rude. Guess what? This is the moment where you have to take care of number one, and that's you. So going through any extent, not to protect people's emotions, but to protect your own emotions. At whatever cost that is, it's never going to be a bad investment.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I do in the morning is I write, with my journaling practice, I write down, how do I want to feel today? And then I go about my day thinking about, okay, what activities, what things can I think, what actions can I take that are going to enable me to feel that way? So even yesterday in my journal, I wrote down joy. So in the middle of the day, after we put music on, we put the windows open, and we had like a family dance party. Like, there's so many emotions that are available to us, but what happens is that we just sleepwalk into the same recycled thoughts that create the same type of emotion. We need to start getting intentional about how we want to feel. And it's funny because I was listening to something on the weekend, and they were talking about the universal laws, and they were talking about the law of frequency. And it's like, if you're in a radio station, there could be rock playing on one station, R&B on another, pop on another, and you can't hear it unless you tune to that frequency to hear that radio station. It's the exact same thing with us, right? We need to be making sure that we're being intentional about those things, so we can be in tune with, you know, what we're actually trying to cultivate in our lives.
This is very interesting. I'm actually about to teach, as you know, Naomi, 4-week detoxifying of the mind coaching, group coaching. And that's exactly what I'm focusing on, is letting go of the crap that takes so much real estate in our mind and become intentional. What you were describing right now of the radio frequency and that the brain will tune in, like you have to tune into a frequency to be able to hear it properly, or else you're going to hear all kinds of stuff. That's a faculty of the brain. I say this to probably every single one of the people I work with, and maybe at every single talk that I give, to remind people that our brain has this beautiful faculty to want to look for evidence of our thoughts. Okay, so if the thought is inaccurate, like Naomi was saying, when she's feeling this anxiety, she recognizes that there's got to be a discrepancy between her thinking and what she actually wants to call into her life. And so whatever thought you're having, your brain will screen out all other evidence of all other possible possibilities and will only focus on the one that you're thinking about, to give you sort of like, I've got your back. Look, I'm finding all this evidence of the thoughts you're having to be true. So if you're finding yourself in a funk, and you're finding like a lot of your thoughts, like Naomi used a perfect word, you're recycling your thoughts, they keep coming back, but they're not the helpful kind of thoughts. They're the thoughts that just bring you down. To pay attention to what those thoughts are and how your brain is looking to screen out everything else except for the thoughts that will or the things in life that will bring out more of the same kind of thought that you're recycling. And if you don't like the station that you're tuning in, if the sound does not, bring joy into your body or high vibration, then it's entirely up to you. And it's super possible to say, I'm changing stations. So Naomi asked 2 wonderful questions. What can I do to think differently? What can I do to raise out of these thoughts? How can I have a higher energy or higher vision of what's happening, to come out of that recycling cycle, to empower yourself to think differently?
I know, it's so powerful. Like, you just think, how easy is it for you to even remember like a traumatic experience, a stressful experience, or even projecting what could be a stressful occasion? It hasn't even happened yet, and instantly your body starts to feel that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So if we can do that so easily with negative events, why can't we use our brain to do that with positive events? And I've really, it's easier said than done, but it's the moment you start to be aware of these things, you can begin to infuse that into the way that you see your lives. And one of an author I love is a guy called Dr. Joe Dispenza. He uses the example of a gazelle, right? And just think of a gazelle, right? 1 minute they're running for their lives from a predator. The next second they're grazing like nothing happened.
Yep.
What we do is we continue to repeat and have this like flight or float mode of what's just happened, rather than being like, okay, what can I be attuned? Clearly there's a disconnect. The fact that I'm feeling this shows that the way that I'm thinking is at odds with how I want to be feeling. How do I change the thoughts? And it's a practice. And just to circle back to what you were saying, Olga, we all have a negativity bias. So one of the things that I do as part of my evening routine is, again, we naturally go into nothing's working. Oh my God, I've just watched the news. Everything is awful. I do an evidence journal. Like, what is evidence that things are moving in the way that I want them to? What's evidence that things are working? What's evidence that there is joy? And then all of a sudden I remember, oh, that moment when Atlas did this today. And the things that you just bypass so easily, So those are some of the things that really help for me.
I love this, Naomi. This brings me to a question that I had meant to ask you. I absolutely love the evidence-based journaling. This is an exercise that I ask all of my clients with anxiety to abide by, because anxiety is based on things that have never happened or they haven't happened yet, either during the past or future. So the evidence-based brings you back to the present, where I'm convinced all is good. So do you mind walking me through your day? What does your day look like? What, like, you have this morning practice, you have this evening practice, you make me very curious. What else do? You wake up, and then what happens?
So I wake up, I try and get up before Atlas, and my morning time is everything. I'll make my morning tonic. So it's just hot water and lemon, apple cider vinegar, a dash of honey. And that's where I just brain dump, like, what are all of the things that are coming through to me, right? One of the things that I love doing is I'll write down, what am I trying to call into my life right now? Personal, business, everything. And then I just brain dump, what are all the thoughts that come up? Oh my God, that can't happen. Oh, that's never happened to someone. Like all of the like mental chatter that comes down, that tells me why that can't happen. I jot it all down, and then I start to look at it, and I go through that process. Like, is it true? Where is evidence that it's not true? What is a thought? Okay, I can't believe that that's possible right now. It feels a bit far-fetched. It's still a goal. Okay, what can I believe in the interim? What's like, how can I go up that emotional frequency of belief, right? What can I believe right now? Okay. How can I start to embody that? So I have that whole process. Sometimes it's really quick because 5 minutes later it's mama. Other times I have more time, but I really, at the minimum, I try and do that. And then if I'm like making coffee, getting ready for the day, I'll just have my getting Atlas ready. Sometimes I'll just have my AirPods in and I'll be listening to like a meditation. I just want to like ground my day with intention before other people are demanding of my time. Then I'll get the family ready. We always sit at the table and we have breakfast together, which is always really fun. And then I'll start my day. So typically I work Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, Thursdays and Fridays. So I have Wednesdays off, but I work from 9 till 12. And then the rest of the day, it's just playtime with Atlas and I. And then once he goes down at about 7, that's where I get to have my time. And that's where I start to do that kind of grounding evening practice.
So, this is so important. And it made me think of my clients, my students, especially the ones who are taking meditation or mindfulness with me, often put me on this pedestal, and somehow they think that I manage my time so well and that my life is so peaceful and that everything fits into the perfect boxes, where I will have my morning routine that is untouched by anybody, and then I have my morning routine, and and I have no idea where they get this idea from, because that is absolutely not, especially since Mateo is in my life. And Naomi, you and I are lucky. We're in relationships where our partners get our needs and get the line of our work, and they're supportive human beings who help us do what we need to do to be happy and healthy. But I wanted to say that actually this morning when I woke up, I am always awakened by my son. I never wake up before him. I am not the kind of human who wakes up at 4 a.m, rises, and it's like, oh, look, I've got the whole day ahead of me. That's not me. I stay up late, and so I like to sleep in. But Mateo wakes me up and he starts chatting from his room, and I can hear him. Our bedrooms are really close to each other and both doors are wide open, so I can hear him. And I used to hear the first sound of Mateo and like run to that bedroom, and it was like favorite moment. Like, but I wouldn't want to let him cry, right? Like, oh, you're talking. Then I realized that he was just chatting. He's screaming and all, but he wasn't in distress.
Yeah.
So I started, and then I started like taking enjoyment in listening to that in the mornings. But I still wasn't doing it. It felt like I was already being called to work, right? Like, okay, get up and come give me some attention. And then this morning, over the last few weeks, I've had specific back pain, and I know it's from lack of stretching. And so I decided that before I go get Mateo, I'm going to stretch, because unless he's in crazy distress, that's not a big, he's not waiting. I'm not doing a whole yoga class. I'm simply doing some stretches from my own bed. And I started doing that. And this morning, I realized how I could hear him. And that was no longer a stressor, because I had decided that it was okay for him to wait for me. Yes, I wake up to him. And again, unless he's in crazy, like it sounds like something's wrong, I'm going to go and skip my moment. Otherwise, I'm going to give myself 3 to 5 minutes. I don't think it's longer than that. But it feels like $1,000,000, because now I woke up and the first thing I did was to attend to my needs. And then I set my intention for the day, much like Naomi was saying, how do I want to feel this way? I asked myself, what do I intend for today? Which is pretty much the same thing. I think of like, what do I want to work on? And this morning, it took me a while. I'm like, listening? No, it's not. So I started going through a list of things that I wanted to feel today until I got my intention. It's like, okay, I'm ready for you, Mateo. Yeah. Now we can start our day. So I think, for anybody who's listening to this and thinking like, the kid's running to my bed, you can still do it with them in bed. You can still kind of like take your moment. If that's what you decide to do at this time, like for me, that's important to start my day centered. That might not be important to you guys listening. But what I'm trying to tell you is that it's not perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a dedicated time where
exactly. You just have to. It's funny because we say that we don't have the time for the things that ground us, but then you start to look, but you have time for TV, you have time for this, you have time for that. It's all just about priorities. Like sometimes I don't literally, it's the morning time and I can't, Atlas is in bed with me. He's still sleeping, doesn't want mummy to move. And I've literally just had to put like my little notepad next to my bed, all there ready. And I'm just getting a little moment just to kind of brain dump and process. Like it's not perfect, but I think we have to be honest with ourselves and say like, is this a priority for me? If it's a priority, we'll make it work. Like for me, listening to things that inspire me, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, that is something, again, part of that curriculum for success that just puts me in the right headspace. People always say to me, how do you find time? I'm like, I don't watch Netflix, isn't a priority for me. Movies aren't a priority for me, but this is. So, I can take him for a walk when he's having a nap and I put my headphones in and that's 4 chapters done. Everything is about priorities. But I think sometimes it's so easy for us to say, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. No, you do, but just that wasn't a priority. And that's not another measure to whip yourself and make yourself feel wrong for it, but just let's be honest.
I agree. And to have expectations that match your lifestyle. So many of my clients have this expectation. Like you, I don't watch TV. If anything, this COVID-19 has proven time after time that watching TV gives me anxiety. There's something about sitting there in front of a TV that just doesn't agree with my personality. My husband loves it. He's like the rest of humanity who loves Netflix. I cannot, I just start feeling like, what am I doing? Like this is, I could be doing something else. And that, it's just, many people see it as a relaxing time and I honor that. I'm just saying it's not my thing. And because of that, I think that I find a lot of extra time because I'm not watching, I'm not addicted to a show. I get bored, thankfully, out of every single show. There hasn't been a show that I can finish because after the second one, I already know what's happening. Or this just seems like real life. I'm not interested. So I think that finding those priorities, but matching your expectations to your lifestyle, right? And to who you are. We have this idea of what we want to be. If watching TV is part of your self-care routine or something that makes you feel good, don't then listen to this podcast and say, okay, the solution for me is to stop watching TV, because realistically, how long are you going to sustain that?
Exactly.
So it's having expectations of not who you want to be, but who you are. Who are you? And based on that, then say, how can I support my being of this way?
100%. And that's why, exactly, as I said, for me, I find listening to inspirational things, that gives me joy. Somebody else may be TV, others may be napping. It could be anything, but it's about being really honest about what do I need in order to feel good? What do I need in order to feel like I'm living a rich, dynamic life? And then getting intentional about that. And again, making it a priority. Everybody's priorities are different, right? One is not better than the other. But the moment I started getting really clear about what I need, it just became so much easier. So one of the things that we do, Michael and I have like a weekly check-in, and we do everything like finances, schedules, family stuff, all of that kind of stuff. But one of the things we do is schedules. And again, this was before COVID. We do stuff for the family and then also stuff individually. And I ask myself, what do I need for self? What does my week look like? Okay, so this is a busy work week. I'm going to need some self-care. Or this is a busy work week, so we're going to have to, why don't we do a Hello Fresh or something? Because I'm not going to be, I don't have the capacity to be cooking, or, you know, whatever. Or do you know what? This week, I really just want to have fun with Atlas. So why don't we schedule on Tuesday, we'll go to the zoo, on this, we'll do that. So it's not intentional, because I think before I'd always be like, oh, but I'm not happy, or this didn't happen, or this, but I just wasn't making it a priority. And now I always start when I'm planning the week, like, what am I going to need? What am I going to need to feel connected to my husband? What am I going to need in order to feel connected to myself? What do I need to ask from the people around me next week based on my calendar to feel supported? Who do I want to call? Like, I want to catch up with Olga, so I need to make that a priority. I need to reach out to her. We need to get a Zoom date in, right? So being clear on what makes you feel good and making it a priority, not a, being intentional about it.
Yeah, like not if I have time, I'll get to those things that make me feel good, which I think is what people turn to. And I think this is so important, especially now where we're feeling disconnected because we're many, like not you and I, because we've been home for a long time, but for the people who do used to go out to work and socialize on a regular basis. Like, I remember when I first started being self-employed and moved into my private practice, into my office, it was a big change not have coworkers to chat about what was happening in my day to day. So it takes time to adjust. But now that we're feeling disconnected, what's important to you? Naomi and I actually, not intentionally and not together, but I think I did this, and I believe that you did too, because you reached out to me at some point. I created a list at the beginning of the year of the people that are uplifting to me, that I absolutely either get inspired or love having around. I like the feeling of these people in my life. And I reach out to them to set up weekly or bi-weekly or monthly get-togethers or meetings of some kind, because I love their influence. And if I don't schedule these things, guys, this will just be a nice thought that went by my head and I never did, right? So, like, to doing an inventory, kind of like cleansing the inside of your home, cleansing like your social life, cleansing your priority list, your to-do list. How many things can be put on your not to-do list?
Yeah.
Like, this is not a priority right now. That we're at home all the time, that we don't have the supports. I am not so eager about cleaning the windows of my house. Like, can that wait? Yep. Do I see that this is a factor in my house, because I have 3 dogs who love watching out the windows, and so they lick the windows often, and you can see, like, they're not magically clean windows. But is that a priority right now when I'm the one who has to clean and do everything else around the house? No, not really. So it's making the time for what matters to you. And I don't know you, Naomi, but I love that you meet with your husband and do this. I don't have the husband with the personality who sit down and I go through this at all. He's an ADD person. I don't know that he is, but he needs me more like on the go. Hey, today I need this from you. Okay. And he'll be like, oh, okay. So I wish we were more organized, but he just doesn't have the personality to sit with me and plan a week in advance. It would drive him bananas. And maybe some of you listening will be like, yes, I wish my husband would sit down and be like, I need this from you this week. What do you need from me? But how can you, for sure, ask your partner for to support you in your needs, but it has to come from you. You have to be clear on what your needs are and what is it that you need from them. But also, I don't want you to use this as an excuse to not take care of yourself. Yeah. Right? So if your husband cannot sit down with you and plan the week and say, okay, I'll take this or I'll do, what can you do then to find a way to supply yourself with whatever it is that your needs are, so that you don't resent anybody else, and so that your happiness and well-being is not in somebody else's hands. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also, Olga, circling back to what you were saying earlier, I don't feel guilt outside of what we've spoken about,
Right.
because I have my priorities very clearly delineated. Even as we were saying, you know, you and I had this conversation, we do the same thing at the start of every year. We're like, what couples do we want to really nurture, that we both love both of them, and you know, that we want to spend time with? And then what friends individually do we want to nurture? We can't be all things to all people all the time. So when I have to say no to commitments with other people or other things, I don't feel bad. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like, oh, I'm a bad friend, I'm a bad this, because I've already predetermined that these are my priorities. If I still have the capacity to give and it feels good to do that, absolutely. But I don't feel obliged, you know? And it's like with you, with the windows, you decided that, yes, I can see them, but it's not a priority right now. So it takes away the guilt. You've already processed, yep, it exists, but I'm cool with it being like that for the moment, because that is not my priority. It takes all the guilt away.
And it doesn't define us, which I think is where most people are struggling. Like, well, if, you know, and if I know the fear mind will say, oh, if you don't worry about this, if you don't clean this now, is this going to become your new you, where, you know, your entire house is going to be, you know, falling apart? No, you're cleaning, you're keeping up with the things that you absolutely have to. But are they priorities? Can they now be done once a month versus every week? You know, I'm sticking to a cleaning example, but it doesn't have to be about cleaning. You probably know what things are bothering you right now. And if you feel that bother, that might be a good cue for you to look back into that priority list. Like, is this a priority right now?
And let's start trusting ourselves to lead ourselves, trusting ourselves that if we have, that we're never going to allow ourselves to go off the deep end, right? If something comes up, we trust ourselves that we can lead ourselves through that, and that if we're feeling nudged in a certain way, that these are priorities and these are not, it's for a reason, so we can honor that.
Yeah, I love the trusting ourselves, and that might sound very foreign for some people, because maybe their mind doesn't always tell them great ideas, and so they've learned to distrust the mind. And I would say, yes, don't trust your mind always. Like we said, fear will speak loudly, and you don't have to believe every thought. But trust your intuition. Trust that gut in your belly, that heartfelt emotions that tell you this doesn't feel good right now. Might not be a priority. And notice the stress that's a physical sensation. The stress that doing some of the activities that you may be doing are causing you, because that might also be your body talking and like, I don't feel like doing this right at this moment. And honor that, you know, like if you notice your shoulders are tensing, you're like doing something with an attitude, or resenting it that you're doing it, stop it. Don't do it. Either do it with love or don't do it at all. Because if you're not doing it with love, this is not, it's not working for you at this moment in time. So maybe you'll be able to grab that laundry basket again when you're in the mood, but not at this moment. Honor your body talking to you.
As they say, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And even going back to the delegating, in my business anyway, when I've delegated some of those things off, then it's enabled me to be more connected and intentional with the other things, which has a ricochet effect on my life. If I was just having to continue to do some of those things, it would feel like Groundhog Day all the time, which would have an adverse effect on the way that I show up in my marriage, with my kid, all of that kind of stuff.
Yes, and I'm glad you're touching on marriage, because I think that the more satisfied we are with ourselves at the end of the day, the more, or beginning of the morning, you know, like the more satisfied you are with how you're handling your day, how you're balancing things out, the more space you're going to have as a partner to actually be there as a partner. I feel that often when we're overwhelmed, we're showing up into our partnerships wanting to take from them, right? Like, give me something, because I am exhausted. I've given everything out, and I need you to like do this for me, and it feels like life-threatening.
Yeah.
It's like, you need
Yeah,
to.
because we don't know how to give to ourselves. We don't know how to give to ourselves. We don't know how to replenish our own cups. We don't know how to make ourselves happy. So we throw all of that on this one person to do.
That's it. And then I see couples divorcing because of this. And I'm like, no, you're placing these expectations on the wrong person. What if you were to take care of yourself? What if you were to take charge of what Naomi and I are saying, giving yourself those priorities, and no matter what, giving those to yourselves? How will you show up differently in your life? What do you think will change or be different if you stopped all the reasons your mind tells you as to yes, but this is why I'm not doing it, and just dive in full force and try? Like, what if I stop these excuses and I begin to give in to what my heart really desires?
Yeah. The more I make myself happy, the better my marriage becomes. The more I create white space to have a better relationship with myself, my husband gets to have a deeper connection with me from that place of me knowing too. Like, it all works. It all works. And it's taken me a long time to figure that out, I tell you.
And I'm so happy we're having this conversation, Naomi, because I feel that we often think of people connecting to us as a task that comes from the outside world into ourselves, right? Like, if I wanted my husband to connect with me, he will have to take the initiative to connect with me. And
Yeah.
often we don't see it as this magnetic force or energy that the more I connect to myself, the easier it will be for these people to connect with me. Right? Like, it's you're attracting that, and you're opening the space, and you're giving them permission to come close in the way that you want them to show up. So it is so worth it to live a life of authenticity with yourself, to speak to the truth for you, and to set the goals that matter to you, and to live in accordance with that. One of the things I've learned the most from you, Naomi, is this word that you said to me and has stuck in my brain. And every day I ask myself, how can I embody this? So if these are my values, if motherhood is important to me, how can I embody that? How can I be the body of that? What is it that I want to see growing in my life? And how can I become that body that is doing it, that is experiencing it? No questions asked. If you come into my home, you will notice that I love being a mom. Why? Because I am the body of that, because it's a strong value in my heart. So I think it's a valid reflection to ask. Maybe even write down your intentions, your values, your priorities, what really matters to you. And then ask yourself, how am I becoming the body of that? That's embodiment. That's what it means to be that which you want to see happening.
Yeah.
Well, Naomi, I think this has been a good conversation, as always. If anything, guys, if you're getting anything out of this, is call your friends. have coffee with your friends and have this conversation where you're like, we're saying the same thing. It's so good.
Exactly.
Naomi, I know you're a busy woman, and I'm so appreciative of your time to come and share the woman behind such a successful business and successful family. And I know it's not all perfect, and I know you clearly have embodied what matters to you, and you show up every single day for you, for your family, and for your business. I have benefited from both your friendship and your business wisdom. And I can say that it is so evident that you're always consistent with the way you behave, consistent with the way you think and behave. It's always in alignment, and that is just so refreshing. And it makes for really authentic friendships, to tell the truth, and relationships. So I want to thank you for being authentic. I want to thank you for your time and sharing some of you with my audience today. For you guys listening, I really, truly hope that you gather whatever is helpful out of this conversation and you take action today, not tomorrow, not in an hour, but today. Any of what we said, if it stuck with you, take it home and do something beautiful with that. If you want to share this podcast with somebody else who you think could benefit, by all means do that. if you are a business entrepreneur person who is looking for guidance, I would absolutely ask you to check out Naomi. She can be found on Instagram as the Lifestyle Edit. Is that right,
Yes.
Naomi? And
Yes.
also, she has a podcast, same name, which I was just listening to her podcast yesterday, actually, when I took my baby for a walk. And I found it super, super helpful for those who are in business. But she also has some good conversations in there with other people who I think are helpful to everybody. Is there one particular podcast that you can recommend here today that you've done that you think could speak to my audience, Naomi?
Definitely go and have a look at some of the episodes where I was interviewed. I delve a lot more into a lot of these big mindset shifts and kind of quantum leaps that I've had personally that has then manifested in lots of other things in my life. So that might be a great place to start.
That's awesome. Naomi, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being you. And I know I'll be seeing you later this week. I'm excited for that.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Please leave us a review. Let us know what you thought of this particular episode. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you like it. There's more interviews like this coming up. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. I can only improve and make better podcasts by listening to what you want out of this podcast. It is your podcast after all. So thank you so much for listening, and until next time.